offence is about feelings, and feelings are personal. Some people are offended by equality. So what?
For the first time, we'll make local housing targets mandatory, requiring local authorities to use the same method to work out how many homes to build.
I mean the old-fashioned ones, you know, the old-fashioned women. Oh, God, you know, the ones with wombs.
Did Angela Rayner just claim there's no housing crisis in the UK? In a shocking turn of events, the Deputy Prime Minister's words have left the nation stunned and searching for answers. But wait until you hear Ricky Gervais's response. The comedian's brutal takedown of Rayner's out-of-touch statement has set social media ablaze and left politicians scrambling. You won't believe what he said next. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. Angela Rayner's words sent shockwaves through the nation. There's no housing crisis in the UK, she declared, leaving listeners stunned and questioning her grasp on reality. This bold claim from the Deputy Prime Minister has ignited a firestorm of controversy, with many wondering how an elected official could be so disconnected from the struggles of everyday people. The reality on the ground paints a vastly different picture.
Decisions about what to build should reflect local views, but that should be about how to deliver new homes, not whether to.
Last year, big backlash, wasn't there? Big backlash. People going, you can't say that, you can't.
Whilst the previous government watered down housing targets, caving into their anti-growth backbenchers, this Labour government is taking the tough choices, putting people and country first.
Across the UK, families are facing unprecedented challenges in finding affordable housing. Long-term residents find themselves priced out of their own neighbourhoods, while young adults struggle to take their first steps onto the property ladder. The dream of home ownership, once a cornerstone of British society, seems increasingly out of reach for many. Rayner's statement stands in stark contrast to the hard data. Recent reports reveal alarming statistics on homelessness and housing waitlists. Thousands of families are stuck in temporary accommodations, their lives in limbo as they wait for a place to call home. Overcrowded shelters have become a sad reality for many, with parents and children crammed into spaces never meant for long-term living. The public reaction was swift and fierce. Social media platforms erupted with personal stories of housing struggles, each one a direct challenge to Rayner's assertion. Twitter users shared their experiences of skyrocketing rents, impossible mortgage requirements, and the constant fear of eviction. One viral post read, "Tell that to my family of 4 living in a 1-bedroom flat, Ms. Rayner. We've been on the council waiting list for years." News outlets were quick to pick up on the story, with political commentators expressing disbelief at Rayner's apparent disconnect from reality. The Guardian ran a scathing opinion piece titled, "Out of Touch, When Politicians Forget Who They Serve," while the BBC featured interviews with housing experts who systematically dismantled Rayner's claim. As the controversy grew, many began to speculate about the potential consequences of Rayner's statement. Would this be the gaffe that finally forced the government to take serious action on housing? Or would it be yet another example of politicians facing no real accountability for their words? The initial fallout was significant. Calls for clarification came from all corners, with opposition parties demanding that Rayner explain her comments in Parliament. Even within her own party, there were whispers of discontent, with some MPs privately expressing concern about the damage to their credibility. As the dust began to settle, a new voice entered the fray, one that would take this controversy to unexpected heights. Ricky Gervais, the comedian known for his sharp wit and no-holds-barred approach to social commentary, decided to weigh in on the matter. His response would not only reignite the debate, but also shine a spotlight on the growing disconnect between political leaders and the people they claim to represent. Cancel save. When a comedian becomes the voice of reason in a political debate, you know something's gone seriously wrong. Ricky Gervais's unexpected intervention in the housing crisis controversy has exposed a glaring disconnect between politicians and the public. But how exactly did he manage to cut through the noise? Gervais, never one to mince words, took to social media with a scathing response to Angela Rayner's denial of the UK housing crisis. His initial reaction was a mix of disbelief and outrage, perfectly capturing the mood of the nation. "Is she having a laugh?" Gervais tweeted, followed by a string of biting comments that quickly went viral. While Gervais is primarily known for his comedy, he's no stranger to political commentary. Over the years, he's used his platform to address various social issues, often with his trademark irreverence. But taking on the Deputy Prime Minister over a major policy issue, that's a new level, even for him. The unusual nature of a comedian challenging a senior politician on such a serious matter hasn't been lost on anyone. It's a testament to the current state of British politics that many are finding more truth and accountability in Gervais's jokes than in official statements from elected officials. Gervais's critique of Rayner's comments was as hilarious as it was hard-hitting. He used his razor-sharp wit to highlight the absurdity of denying a crisis that millions of Brits face daily. "Maybe there's no housing crisis in Angela's world," Gervais quipped, "but in the real world, people are struggling to keep a roof over their heads." He then proceeded to list off housing statistics that painted a damning picture of the situation, all while maintaining his comedic edge. The public response to Gervais's stance has been overwhelmingly positive. Social media has been flooded with messages of support, with many praising him for speaking truth to power. His comments have resonated with a population that feels increasingly disconnected from their political leaders. People are sharing their own housing horror stories, using Gervais's words as a rallying cry for change. As Gervais' tweets continue to gain traction, speculation is growing about a potential face-off between the comedian and the Deputy PM. Will Rayner respond directly to Gervais? Will we see a televised debate between the unlikely opponents? The anticipation is building, and the public is eager to see how this unconventional political showdown will unfold. The impact of Gervais's comments on public discourse has been significant. He's managed to reignite the conversation about the housing crisis, forcing it back into the spotlight after Rayner's dismissive remarks. Media outlets are picking up the story, amplifying Gervais's critique and putting pressure on the government to address the issue head-on. As this unexpected chapter in British politics unfolds, it raises broader questions about political accountability. When comedians are more trusted than politicians to speak the truth about pressing social issues, it's clear that something is fundamentally broken in the system. Gervais's intervention might just be the catalyst needed to spark a serious conversation about the disconnect between those in power and the people they're meant to serve. Comedians calling out politicians might get laughs, but the underlying issue is no joke. How did we reach a point where the British public has more faith in a sitcom star than their Deputy Prime Minister? The answer lies in a web of unfulfilled commitments and evasive tactics that's been years in the making. Recent polling data paints a grim picture of public trust in UK politicians. The numbers show a steep decline in confidence, with many citizens expressing deep skepticism about their leaders' ability to address pressing issues like housing. It's a sentiment that's been brewing for years, fueled by a long history of broken promises and perceived disconnection from the realities faced by ordinary people. Take, for example, the Prime Minister's pledge to end the use of asylum hotels. Not only has this promise gone unfulfilled, but reports suggest the government is actually expanding their use. This kind of backtracking leaves citizens feeling betrayed and overlooked, especially when they see newly built accommodations being prioritised for migrants, while UK nationals languish on lengthy waiting lists. The gap between politicians' words and actions on housing is particularly stark. While they speak of addressing the crisis, their policies often seem to exacerbate the problem. It's a pattern that's repeated across party lines, eroding public trust with each unfulfilled commitment. Adding fuel to the fire are the scripted responses and evasive tactics employed by politicians when confronted with these issues. Instead of addressing concerns head-on, many resort to rehearsed talking points that do little to assuage public frustration. This approach only deepens the sense that politicians are out of touch with the people they're meant to serve. The Labour Party, ostensibly the opposition, isn't immune to this crisis of trust. Internal dissent, particularly against Keir Starmer's leadership, reflects a broader problem. Party members have voiced their dissatisfaction, citing perceived dishonesty and a lack of vision. This internal strife signals a deep divide within the party and raises questions about their ability to position themselves as a credible alternative to the current government. As public frustration mounts, the long-term consequences of this erosion of trust are becoming clearer. There's a growing sense that the entire political system needs an overhaul. Calls for reform are getting louder, with citizens demanding a new approach that prioritizes accountability and the needs of ordinary people over political spin. The housing crisis serves as a stark reminder of the human impact of these political failings. Behind the statistics and broken promises are real people struggling to find affordable homes, families living in overcrowded conditions, and young adults unable to get a foot on the property ladder. It's these personal stories that truly highlight the disconnect between political rhetoric and the harsh realities faced by many across the UK. Picture this: a young couple, both working full-time, living in their car because they can't afford rent. Sound far-fetched? For thousands across the UK, it's a grim reality. But as the housing crisis deepens, an unexpected force is rising to challenge the status quo. Meet Sarah and Tom, a hard-working couple from Manchester. Despite holding down steady jobs, they've been on the council housing waiting list for 3 years. Their story isn't unique. Across the country, families are feeling ignored and overshadowed by decisions they struggle to comprehend. This growing frustration speaks volumes about the disconnect between political leaders and the people they're meant to serve. The UK housing market is a complex beast, with demand far outstripping supply. But it's not just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about real people struggling to find a place to call home. The conflict between citizen needs and government policies couldn't be more stark. While politicians talk about solving the crisis, their actions often seem to make things worse. Take the issue of housing allocation. Recent data shows a significant portion of new developments being earmarked for migrants, sparking anger among UK citizens who've been waiting years for a home. It's a powder keg of resentment, with many feeling abandoned by a system they once trusted. But what do the experts say? Housing specialists argue that the crisis isn't just a policy failure, it's a failure of leadership. They're calling for bold, immediate action to address the shortage. Some propose radical solutions like mass council house building programs or stricter regulations on foreign property investment. Others advocate for innovative approaches like community land trusts or modular housing schemes. As the government drags its feet, grassroots movements are stepping up. Community-led housing initiatives are springing up across the country, with citizens taking matters into their own hands. These projects offer a glimmer of hope, showing what's possible when people come together to solve problems. But will it be enough? The public's patience is wearing thin. There's a growing belief that without dramatic changes, the housing crisis and rising homelessness will only worsen. Citizens are demanding accountability from their leaders, and they're not willing to wait much longer. As we look to the future, one thing is clear. The housing crisis is more than just a political issue. It's a human rights crisis that's tearing at the fabric of British society. The question now is whether our leaders will finally step up and address it, or if they'll continue to bury their heads in the sand while families like Sarah and Tom are left out in the cold.